I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you trust the news media?
I trust it mostly, yes.
It would be nice to trust them, but no, I don't.
I think the news media is adding to this divisiveness.
My trust has to be earned in the media, I think.
But first, with a federal election a little more than a year away at the very latest, protecting our democracy from interference and disinformation is becoming more of a priority as we draw closer to voting day. As part of CPAC's upcoming project focusing on disinformation and democracy both here in Canada and around the world, we sent our cameras out to ask people if they're concerned about disinformation and the democratic process in this country. Our question: are you concerned disinformation could affect Canada's next election?
Yes, I am.
Why?
Because I think most people are not getting their news from credible sources where the journalism is balanced and corroborated.
It already does.
Tell me why. Tell me what you mean.
Well, I mean, I think that it's a long story, but I think that we've sort of moved away from politics that actually looks at political issues in a lot of ways. Like, I think the way that people blame Trudeau for everything is quite silly, and like, I don't really like Trudeau, but I also don't think he's responsible for absolutely everything. And I feel that's like a very worrying trend where there's sort of an unwillingness to look at issues and to actually just say like, no, it's this one guy doing everything. So it's one example. Yeah.
Yes, I do believe so. Because of, talking heads that are also probably unaware and probably also making their points based on, disinformation. You have politicians that feed off of that and then throw their nonsense back and forth at each other without actually doing anything. And then people also feed back on that. So it causes like a loop of disinformation.
That's a wonderful question. I think it comes down to having a rational mind, and not only that, but being able to having a good critical thought process and balancing out different sources of media. So if you're one who typically adheres to one source, I'd say it's possible to be swayed by misinformation, of course, depending on the source of media you choose. Disinformation. So in terms of legacy media, usually you can have some in terms of statistics. You'll have some reliable information there, but it really depends. There's so many different sources of media out there nowadays. But yeah, it's good if you have it in the back of your head to keep out for. Yeah, you should be fine.
Depends on the viewers if they're able to discern whether or not, that is disinformation. What their understanding is of particular situations and how things can be seen in different lights, and having the bigger picture of things, depends on the viewers as well.
Absolutely, because people aren't doing their due diligence in fact-checking the information that they're gathering. We're seeing it with protests that are even happening and boycotting that's happening. So you can't just believe what you hear, you have to do your due diligence.
Definitely, I think we've seen that already happen in previous elections in other countries, so the same could be said for ours.
Yes. Because there's so much of it out there, and people don't really have a good grasp of what's going on, especially younger people. I don't understand that they're getting civics in school anymore like we did when I was in school. So, yeah, I don't think they necessarily understand.
Certainly, disinformation can always, I know people can be swayed pretty easily, and you want to bring forward the right information for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it has been for a long time, hasn't it? Worried. I mean, yeah, I think we're always worried. It's a scary time that we're living in.
Yes, today with the media, and particularly with social plans and media and stuff, there's all kinds of stuff that can be posted that is in an attempt to try and convince someone. I find also sometimes too that there's a certain bias within even the media, because at a time when the media tend to reflect both sides of a story, now they tend to depend on only one side, and they may not get the other side of the story, and that's not properly reflected or communicated back to the person who is being informed.
You can see it right across the globe. You see what happens with the news in the United States and the news here. You're always concerned about the information you receive. You just hope it's honest, factual, and you can make a decision based on the true facts.
So disinformation is very prominent all over Canada, and I do feel that it will affect the next election because people aren't sure what is truth and where to find out what is truth. So I am concerned that there is false information being spread and that it will be hard for Canadians to discover what is truth and what is not.
There are people out there with a lot of garbage that are convincing people of something that they're pulling the wool over people's eyes, and to me that's scary. That's very scary. And with the next election, sometimes people think that they want to be something like the Americans, and some people are saying that somebody's too liberal and somebody's too conservative, and to me it's all about the person, what the person espouses.
A federal party leader is the name and the face attached to a political brand, and attracting and connecting with new voters to the party is going to be one of their top priorities leading up to the federal vote. We sent our cameras out to ask Canadians if any of the party leaders are connecting with them so far, or are they failing to appeal to the average Canadian. Our question: how well do the federal party leaders resonate with you?
Yeah, I think they resonate fairly well. I know kind of where they stand on all the things, and they seem to be in the public eye a lot, so I have a good understanding of where they all stand.
Nope, at all, no. Totally.
Any reasons why?
I think for how long it's been? For about 6 years, right? I do see that Canada is not the same Canada anymore. So there is lots of changes going on, and I see that people are struggling and losing their jobs. Economically, everything is very expensive, again, comparing to, and I understand that inflation is changing every year, but this is not about inflation, I guess. So, yeah, this is what I feel.
Policies of the party and the values of the party are more where I'm at. I think Justin Trudeau has undermined himself repeatedly, and I think really diminished trust in the Liberal Party of Canada in a way that unfortunately has probably galvanized the base and possible success of the Conservatives in a way that I think can be really probably threatening to a lot of the things Canadians value. So that's my answer. Unfortunately, none of them really resonate with me.
I do think that they're all pretty out of touch at this stage. I mean, typically I'm from BC, so I'm NDP. And always have been. So coming to Calgary, it's definitely a different sort of surroundings. But again, I do feel that the federal parties are sort of out of touch.
I think they resonate quite well. I'm a conservative by nature, so I enjoy Pierre Poilievre and his political stance.
Poorly.
Why is that?
Poorly because they don't seem to take their job serious, that they're representing the people, and the shenanigans they sometimes play, it's like school children.
I think quite well. I mean, I don't like some of the policies that they do, but overall I think they try to protect us and give us a better life in Canada.
Well, I'm already decided how I'm going to vote the next federal election, but I'm just satisfied with all three federal party leaders. I don't count the Green Party in that, but I think for a country our size and the diversity that we have, I'd like to see a change at the top at all three parties.
But I don't really feel like we're seeing particularly good policies from any of them. I think the recent Liberal moves on housing are decent, but not amazing. I think that we're not really seeing the type of actions we need on climate change as well. So, you know, I also think that so far we haven't really seen very many ideas from the Conservatives. I think that's quite troubling because they're probably going to win the next election, but they really have no housing policy or climate change policy.
Not that well. Yeah, I don't find Trudeau that eloquent a speaker. I don't like Poilievre's manner and approach. Jagmeet Singh, I don't dislike him, I just don't feel like he's strong enough to, that I'd want him to represent the country.
Elizabeth May?
I like Elizabeth May. I've voted Green before, but she doesn't get much of a platform.
They all have good and negative traits, I would say. I was leaning one way. I have shifted, but I still struggle with the shift.
Yeah, I think there may be, I feel that politicians are too political now, and potentially people aren't feeling the trust as a result of that. And I just think that there's a disconnect between reality and the leadership.
Not feeling great right now. I have a big issue with like how we do politics in Canada in general. I think the it's a secret two-party system that we act like it's more than that. So I think we kind of need to just change everything from the ground up, start over, give Indigenous people back their land and their rights, and yeah, don't think any party that's currently running or in power has any plans to do any of that.
Well, politics has changed a lot since I was a young man. It's very different today. I have a feeling that a lot of people who are involved in politics now are in it for their own gain, and quite often, as a middle-class person, I often don't think that we're really seeing the great benefits of it, and I think there's a great big gap eroding now between the more well-off and the middle class itself.
I think I have mixed reviews. I think it's kind of a case of picking the best of the worst, unfortunately. I think there are certain parties that resonate more with me, but like I said, it's going to come down to what I see happen in real life and not during the sales pitch.
Pretty good, I guess. I have a big issue with me is we got through COVID, and they brought us through COVID, and I know financially that was a big issue, and I'm pretty proud of them for doing that, I guess. And when you look at other countries and what's going on in other countries, I think we're pretty lucky.
Which city has the most restaurants per capita in Canada? Halifax, Victoria, or Edmonton?
Victoria.
Edmonton.
Halifax?
Edmonton?
I say Edmonton.
Edmonton, I'll agree with that.
I'd say Edmonton.
Edmonton.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Edmonton. Victoria. Yeah, Victoria.
Guys, that's correct.
Easy.
We knew.
High five.
Yeah, we knew from the beginning.
Easy.
According to data from Statistics Canada, with 67 eateries per 10,000 residents, Victoria, BC has more restaurants, eateries, pubs, and bars per person than any other city in Canada. Victoria also has one of the highest numbers of restaurants with 4-star reviews or above, which makes it one of the top destinations for foodies visiting Canada. These days, with so much information available from so many news sources, deciding which one to pick can be difficult. And sometimes your information can be misleading when you're trying to stay on top of current events. We sent our cameras out to ask Canadians if they have confidence in the different forms of customary news gathering available to them. Our question: do you trust the news media?
Not all the time. Like depends on which station, because some of them are more to the right, some of them more to the left. So really, like not all the time.
Absolutely not. I think it's very biased. I don't trust the news media online, the news media on TV. I think you really have to do your own research.
No, because a lot of times they're just out there to try to get your interest, and a lot of times the stuff isn't true. So I just find it would be nice to trust them, but no, I don't.
Some news media, yes. I think others, it's there to generate attention and ratings and to watch their stations. So sometimes things are overblown, headlines are not always true, and if it's on social media, very, very dangerous.
It's, some of the media is really biased, and they like to make the news look the way they want it to do. And there's a lot of, if you go look now online and all that, there's a lot of fake news, and it's really bad. People have to be smart enough to know what's true, what's false. But unfortunately, not too many do.
That is a good question. I wouldn't say I trust it wholeheartedly. I think there are biases for sure, depending on where you get your news from.
I would say every media is biased at some point, so I take everything with a pinch of salt. So I'm someone who tries to go for other answers and not only one source. So if that could answer my question, yes, but not most of the time.
I think I take a lot of news that I read with a grain of salt, and I try and check my sources, so I have to my trust has to be earned in the media, I think.
Oh yeah, I trust them.
Why do you trust them?
I trust them because I think they're reliable. I think they're journalists who know their skill sets, and they know that they have to investigate things before they report them, where some of the stuff you get on social media is not tested.
The other thing is that the variety of news now available has gotten a lot smaller. I mean, you look at a newspaper today and it's about as thin as a napkin. There's not an awful lot of content left in it anymore.
Well, it depends on which ones. I think that it's important that you do your research when you're looking at news articles, because there definitely is a lot of muddling in that puddle.
For the most part, yes. A lot of the times there are people who fact-checked news medias as well, so then you get a lot of, you know that it's coming from reputable sources.
Depends on the outlet.
Why do you say that?
I believe there can be a bias on news that is provided through large media outlets.
To a certain degree, yes, to deliver some information, but I know that you can't trust everything you see.
I worked in the media for a long time, so yes and no.
Less now than I did 10 years ago.
Tell me why.
For the very reason I mentioned, where I don't think the source needs to be corroborated or verified in order for it to make a good headline, and what sells media, you know.
You trust the media?
More established media, I do, but there is a lot of new media that's saying that they're media that aren't.
More than a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to trust professional journalists over some weirdo on YouTube most of the time. You know, it's not perfect, but I think that at least there are standards, at least there's some way of redressing things that you don't really get on social media. Like, it's not perfect, but it's important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Trusting the news media is a hard one because I think that a lot of times they have an agenda of which they need to propagate their information. And so, do I trust the news media? No, because I know that everybody has a bias. No matter, even when you look at history, you always have a bias. And so I believe with news media, they also take their bias, and so they only give one side of the story, whereas every story has at least two, if not three sides.
So I used to, not so much anymore. So I actually make a point of watching all sorts of media so that I can, and podcasts, so that I can actually get a better understanding of what's really going on, because it's confusing.
I find that the news, to be honest with you, wants to shed a light on things that don't actually matter to me, and why I worry my life. I try and take a bit of a stoic view of it, and I worry about me, and I worry about getting myself better, but a lot of things don't matter to me, so I don't worry about them.
Typically, I don't trust the conventional media. I think it's important for us to do our own research and homework on things. I think it's an interesting perspective, but as an information source, no, typically not.
To an extent, I believe that there are subjects that are taboo and that the news media, for various reasons, will not touch, whether that's to not lose funding from sponsors or for various reasons. I believe that we're not presented the full picture and that certain stories are, suppressed. For various reasons. So, to an extent, I'm careful.
As we are in a minority government situation, an election could occur sooner than later. But when it does finally happen, all of the federal political parties will be working hard to win you over. we wanted to find out how Canadians are influenced when picking the party they're going to support. So we put our ear to the ground and asked Canadians this question. What must a political party do to win your support?
Be aware of the issues, represent the people, and be more concerned about being leaders than winning votes.
Yeah, I like the last point especially. I think leadership involves pointing out a direction that the country should go in and then taking the steps to move it in that direction. And there's got to be trust in order for that to be carried out. And right now, the trust level of the constituency is very, very low.
Build lots of social housing. Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on that for me? Like, why do you feel that way?
Well, Canada used to be, a world leader in building social housing in the 1970s. We don't really build very much anymore, and now we're incentivizing private developers to build stuff, which is better than what we were doing, but if we want actually to have affordable housing, it needs to be nonprofit, and we need a lot of it. We need it fast, and it's time to get building it again.
I don't think they really can do anything. I just go in the day of voting and hope for the best, because I don't feel like my one vote does any different, any good versus everybody else. Yeah.
You don't think your vote makes a splash?
No, I don't. I'm only one person.
And I think political parties, should stop using poor people, the downtrodden, as a scapegoat for crappy, economic decisions, and then using them as a reason that, we're in the hole that we are financially.
Ooh, I'd say with the state of our country right now, me personally, I do a lot of work with homeless and youth homeless, so paying a special attention to the increasing population of our homeless. That's become a Gordian knot in this country. Whomever wishes to cut that knot first and be our Alexander the Great, that they'll have my personal support for sure.
It would be nice if you voted for something other than the lesser of two evils. It'd be nice if you were actually inspired by someone. I think that would be the best thing. To have something that made you enthusiastic, that made you want to vote, other than seeing it as a bit of a chore and just hoping that the person you'd like least doesn't get in.
Really honest and do what's best for our country. I think that is sometimes missed in the political maneuvering that happens, and you lose sight of what's actually here and what matters.
Be honest, be caring, care about the people, and not just about slandering other politicians.
And you?
Yeah, I'd like to see a politician that cares more for Canadians and puts us as a priority, I suppose. So yeah, just a politician that cares for, us.
Be fair to everybody. Some low-income housing couldn't hurt. Rent right now is ridiculous. The price of rent has gone up and living's gone up. And I'm on social assistance right now, so that hasn't gone up in a long time. And it's hard to afford a spot.
What mustn't they do?
Yeah. Right now, my first thought is stand up for people in Gaza and the Palestinian people specifically. I think it's outrageous that the Canadian government has been mostly silent on what's happening overseas, and yeah, I just won't vote for anyone running who is not taking a stand.
Yeah, as well as affordable housing and the way that, it's very hard to be a Canadian right now and to pay your rent and to feed yourself without overworking yourself to the grave, essentially.
Well, it has to perform, and that's the thing. It's one thing to say that they're going to carry on a certain path, which is to benefit a certain segment of the population or certain individuals within the population, but to convince me means that they have to perform it if they're elected. So. Anything that's said before that is still open to speculation. And often what happens is that it's very easy if those who are not in power can perceive what they feel they might be able to contribute to the public, but once they get into power, they discover that it's a whole new environment in there because they have to deal with a bureaucracy that sometimes is quite well entrenched.
A lot of us Islanders are looking for more jobs, and our schooling, our hospital care, Medicare, Leadership, I don't follow politics, and I don't agree with a lot of it, and I believe if there's any more they can probably do in a positive way, which will help out the economy or town, will benefit the Islanders more better.
Well, I think they all start off with good intentions. I worked at the House of Commons when I was younger, but things kind of get a little corrupted as time goes on. I think you have to choose your values and find what party says that those are their values, and then hope for the best and vote and be a voice.
They have to be open to all walks of life, I guess, and to look after housing and homelessness, and that's a big issue now for me, I think for a lot of people, and affordable housing and affordable grocery prices, things like that.
I think be honest and transparent. I think that's easy to say, but it's different to uphold, so I think I need to see proof of what they promise coming into fruition.
Okay, so for a political party to win my support and my vote, I would say they have to have feet on the ground in my area. So that means they have to know the local issues. They have to be part of the community in some way. So I don't want someone that lives somewhere else. I want them to be in the community and know what's going on and know the community members. I want to feel like we can trust them in my family and not wonder what their agenda is. So I am a local voter. I don't look at the political parties for Canada. I definitely vote locally because I think if you're voting local, it shows what party you truly want.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.